Earlier in 2024, Line 6 made waves when they released the Pod Express for guitar and bass. I demoed both, and my assessment was that they were incredible bang for your buck pedals, and a lot of people agreed with me. Between those two videos, I got about 50,000 views, and I can understand why people would be excited about this product. Not only is it a great headphone amp, these are giggable products, and that's because of features like presets, and a lot of presets for that matter. A lot of the alt functions that help you fine tune and dial in that sound. You can attach a volume pedal to it, or you can attach foot switches that can help you turn on or off banks of effects like distortion or modulation. But one thing that has been missing about the Pod Express is the software, the edit software specifically. Well, the wait is over. The Pod Express edit software is here, so let's take a look at it. Welcome to Get Offset. My name is Emily, and you look good at computers, and I mean that as a compliment. FYI, Line 6 did hire me to do this demo. Again, it's a demonstration, it's not a commercial, so I'm going to just show you how I've been using this software, how you could use this software to your benefit, and hopefully you'll get something of value out of it. So let's go ahead and take a look at the software. Please note that you will probably have to update the firmware on your Pod Express, and by the way, I am using the guitar version of this because guitar is my primary instrument, even though you might have found me from the bass demo. So back to what I was talking about. Yes, you will need to update the firmware on your Express. That's very easy to do. You do need a Line 6 account. You can either log in to your account through the software itself, or you can go to the website, download the firmware update, and upload it from your files. Whichever's easier is what you should do. And by the way, that was very easy. It just took a few minutes. The first thing I want to point out is that when you adjust the controls on the pedal, the physical controls, you can see them update in the software. So you can see it going between the different effects. And what do you see controlled? Mainly things like drive, level compensation, there. And then for the modulation, you see going through, essentially the depth, the width, so kind of the depth, and the mix. Which is to say, one of the downsides about the Pod Express when it started was that you could pick amps and you could EQ the amps. You had a little bit more control over them, but for the effects, you really just had more or less for the most part. And that might be enough for some people, and for like my bass gigs, it certainly was enough. But to be able to now go in and fine tune everything with the same level of control you'd probably get from like an HX Stomp is really cool. I simply can't believe the affordability of this thing to begin with, and then adding this software. I feel like this should be twice expensive, but it's not. So let's start with taking a look at the amplifiers. I mean, just look at this control. I'm already on page 2 for the amp over here, but you could control things like EQ before on the face of the pedal. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this, but it does say things like mid, so that's the mid control, the gain, and things like that. But they were secondary controls, so you had to know how to find them. And now you can control things like the multiple levels of drive on an amp. If we turned that up, I would need to turn the channel volume or master volume down. You can easily go between different cabinets. You can adjust the EQ of those cabinets. And as you saw on the page 2, like this amp, for example, has two bright channels, and you can adjust sag, hum, ripple, bias, bias X. Again, these are things that you might be familiar with if you're familiar with like the HX series of effects, HX Stomp and things like that. If you're not, that's fine. Play with it. If you hear a difference, if you feel a difference, that's great. And if you don't really have to use those things. I think the single biggest benefit to the Pod Express edit software is to be able to fine tune those effects that you saw before. You could really only control like the depth, the width, the mix, the amount of gain, which it was the volume was compensating, which that was nice. But now we can even choose different levels of drip. versus. We can adjust the dwell. We can EQ our reverb, which is something that is very important. You can control the level and the mix as well. And you can do this fine tuning for every effect type. Let's say we want to add chorus now. As one of our modulations, we can go and select chorus, and we have 3 different pages of controls. The first one here is that sync, and you can sync that to a BPM. You can sync a lot of the delay times as well to a BPM if you want to. You also have a tap control on the face of the pedal as well. But this is really cool if you're in a band that plays to a track and you want all of your rates synchronized to the tempo of that track. This is a great way to do that again, you just wouldn't have been able to do before. We can also switch between vibrato, chorus, so that's really neat. You get a whole new effect for free. This is tone, mix, level, and headroom. And you can adjust the stereo spread. That's really valuable, I think, on the tremolo here. Because if you watched my full video of this pedal on guitar, the tremolo by its nature is a hard panning tremolo, and you might not want that. You might not want it to pan at all, or you might not want it to hard pan. So you can adjust that here. I'm sorry, this demo is in mono. Oh, that sounds really, really nice. But all of that's to say is there may have been effects you didn't like before. Now you can shape them to your liking, and that is hugely valuable. Let's look at the delay now. Let's go to a simple analog delay. And by the way, you do have to click out of these windows physically. They don't close when you select something. I'm pretty sure that's so that you can A/B test different effects more quickly. So delay, one thing I really like is that, again, you can sync it to tempo or you can control it by milliseconds. So if I want something a little bit more slapbacky, I can get that. I can fine tune that exactly the way that I want it to be. Nice. You can control the number of repeats, the feedback. Before, that was another thing that I think, which is more or less. You can even control the BBD, that's the chip size. Page 2 has more control over spread, level, headroom, depth, and rate, so you can add modulation. So let's go ahead and make this a longer delay time so we can hear that modulation. Very, very cool. The distortion stack in general offers less control over different parameters. However, there are some exceptions like this. Again, this boost, gain, tone, and level. That's most of what you want to control in a boost. One that's interesting to me is distortion. You can go between asymmetrical and symmetrical clipping. Lovely. Darken that tone a bit. One last thing I want to talk about before we get into building a preset is you can control global settings from the app as well. For example, I think this might be the most popular one that people will do. There's a little wheel on the side of this pedal right by the headphone input. So by default, that's set to control the level of the pedal as a whole. It's a master output volume. But a lot of people, myself included, assumed it was only going to be for the headphone volume. So you can select it now so it is what you what I think everyone would expect it to be, which is the headphone volume. That being said, I'm going to keep it for all outputs because I do find it handy to be able to adjust the volume on the fly instead of having to go into an alt control to turn that main volume up or down. You can also assign foot switches here. So I can have foot switch 1 to be for distortion. That's for external foot switches, which is something I do recommend using, is external foot switches over the volume control unless you do a lot of swells. But I have it so it's going to now turn the gain on and off, and effect 1 is distortion, 2 is modulation, 3 is delay, 4 is reverb. And I'll have the other foot switch turn the modulation on or off. And if you're using USB, this as a USB interface, you can adjust the gain levels, essentially the volume. So if you find it's clipping or it's not loud enough, you can adjust that there. So let's go ahead and showcase building a preset here. I'm going to name this one Gritty. We all love gritty, don't we? Love spring reverb. Let's try the hall though. Let's go some analog delay. That's a high mix, so I don't like that much mix on my delays. We know it's there. We don't need it to be the scene stealer. And I would like some tremolo. Actually, let's go with phaser. That could be fun. I like how the phaser effect has more controls than the phaser it's based on has, but real slow fade. Yes. All right, and let's say we're happy with that. All we have to do is hit save. You get a warning that if you already had something there, this will overwrite it. So we're going to say okay. And now it is saved to our device. And what we can do is we can test that. Let me see if that's in this frame. Holding down both foot switches puts it in the preset mode. And we can go back a preset. Go back another one. You probably noticed that it takes a second for it to register in the software, but you can hear it right away. And just to show that's not just that it's attached to the computer. It is saved to the device. The device is no longer connected to the computer. You can see right there, it says no device connected. So my final thought is that the Pod Express was already excellent in every regard. It's so rare that a company can make a device that I think can and should equally appeal to professionals like gigging musicians and beginners and hobbyists so perfectly. But this really does that, because normally you think about your audiences and if you try to appeal to everybody, you're not really going to make a product that's good for anybody. And I think this has always been a winner. And now with this new software, with the Edit software, it is, I think, one of the best deals in gear right now. I really think that almost everybody could benefit from one, whether you need an at-home silent practice solution or you need a fly rig. Now this is even more sellable as a fly rig than it ever was before. So yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's a great product. If you haven't watched the original videos, I think you probably should have watched those first, but they're going to be on the screen here for you, both the guitar and bass versions. You can also like, comment, subscribe. I'll have affiliate links in the video description as well. But thanks for watching. Thanks for understanding. Until next time, my name is Emily. Goodbye.